You ever heard somebody say they were the black sheep of the family? Well, I like to say my sister and I were the tie-dye sheep of the family. In sobriety, that's one of those like chest puffed out things. Like,
Yeah.
I don't have to go back because I've made the choice today to take this day as it comes. Or we'll never get tomorrow, maybe, and yesterday we can never go back to, but we have today, and we get to make the choice now. I'm gonna live different than I used to. It's fun. It's hard in early sobriety, but it is fun the more you do it.
I'm Flint Anderson, founder of Pain, Parents and Addicts in Need. I've been in recovery since 2001, and there isn't much I don't know about recovery. And my mission is to constantly tell the truth about addiction, to make the realities of addiction, recovery, and drug culture known, and to drive awareness and advocate change that ultimately saves lives.
And I'm Jason LaChance, a certified recovery coach with a passion for speaking with others and sharing their knowledge to help others seek recovery and maintain long-term sobriety. And this is the Don't Hide the Scars podcast, presented by Pain, Parents and Addicts in Need. Welcoming to Don't Hide the Scars, Luke Hockenjos. How are you, my brother?
Jason, it's good to see you again, man. Good to see you. I don't know the intro to this podcast, man. Is it like Papa Roach Scars? Are you using that one?
No, we're
Oh
not.
man,
Uh,
man.
but Luke, my friend, of course, an amazing story. Make sure you connect with Luke by clicking the links in the podcast description to really hear about your journey. But the reason I wanted to really talk with you, the holidays are upon us, and this is a really tough time. And I know they were for me initially, for
Yeah,
sure. I was pretty lucky that I didn't have a family that, I wasn't going to show up and there wasn't going to be an aunt and uncle drinking or smoking weed or doing any of that, or cousins asking, hey, come on outside, let's smoke this or let's go to the bar. But I
yeah.
know for some people that's not the case. So I want to dig in tips for maybe staying sober during the holidays, and really how maybe in the first couple of years for you, what you did to stay sober during the holidays.
Yeah, so my family, you ever heard somebody say they were the black sheep of the family? Well, I like to say my sister and I were the tie-dye sheep of the family because I mean we were just all I come from a very, you know, straight-laced family. If back in the day, if they did anything wild and crazy, it was kind of swept under the rug. But my life was a little more exposed into that. So I was the one showing up to the holidays drunk or messed up. The one that when I would walk into the room, the other people would walk out. You know what I mean? So, but then in early sobriety, this is the part that I think a lot of us miss. It's like there's questioning from the people that should embrace you the most, right? Like I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yes.
a lot of my family, they saw me and they were like, okay, so I got sober November 2nd, 2014, right before Thanksgiving and Christmas. And so I show up to Thanksgiving and I am just fired up, sober, loving everybody, just happy go lucky, just popping off all over the place, jumping around, dancing because I was sober and I felt good. But I had a lot of people kind of step back and they're like, okay, is he really sober? How long will this last? What's it gonna look like next month at Christmas? You know what I mean? And so I would say if you're in early sobriety or any kind of sobriety going into the holiday season, you need to be prepared for people not to believe you. And let's be honest, you've probably given them reasons in the past to not believe you. You need to be prepared for people to still be kind of short with you because while you might have experienced something so great as sobriety, they still remember something so horrible as your addiction. And so you've got to be ready. Not everybody's going to be just good for you. Good job. We're so excited. I'd say the majority of the people are going to be a little standoffish at first. Now, is that right on them to treat you that way? Probably not. But all they know of you is the addict. You've got to let them see you in sobriety and let them see that it's real.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that, because we've not had conversations on here with anyone carrying that perspective of we have to own it.
Yeah.
That now begs a question I should ask, my family about that and what their perspective. We
Yeah.
never talked about it. is that responsibility that I have to take on of, it's my fault at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I'm the one that was the writer for the story that they have attached to me. And that is a tough thing to own, but we have to own that, especially like you were saying, your family, the tie-dyed sheep, you and your sister. I love that.
Yeah, we were, man. I mean, that's just, nobody did what we did in our family that we know of. I'm sure there were some people, but we were definitely not the black sheep. It was, and if you ever get to talk to my sister, you'll see what I mean by the tie-dye part. Very, very colorful person.
But that's part of some of those early lessons. I mean, for you, like you said, you got sober November 2nd. I mean, you had 24 roughly calendar days, 25 calendar days of clean time under your belt. You didn't even have a full month. And for those that don't know Luke's story, I mean, let's kind of briefly jump into it. I mean, when you got sober, you literally had a God's voice in your head, and you were going to try to kill someone else and yourself. So 25 days later, it's pretty tough to buy in that there was any kind of mental, emotional, physical, let alone spiritual transformation that could have taken place in that time. But it did for you.
Yep. Yeah. And that's the thing too. Like, the only person that ever really understands that early part of sobriety is somebody that's been through it or going through it, like, because your brain's not all the way there, right? Like, you've been using substances that are changing the way you think, the way you feel, the way you react, the way you act, all these things. So you're experiencing that early part. They're seeing it as, maybe a gimmick, or this can't be real, right? Like, they're almost in such disbelief of sobriety because of how long they've had to live in the addiction, and so you show up, man, like you said, you've got to own it. I think there's a small case of people who got hooked on drugs or alcohol by family members. Very small case, but it's there. That was not my case. But I blamed other people for my circumstances and my situation. Therefore, I was expecting them to get me out of it when I had to be the one to get out of it. And when you don't own it, and then you start getting pissed off because everybody's still looking down their nose at you, you know what I mean? Like, you have to understand that there are consequences to the actions that you've done in your life. Now, I will say this. After the first year of my sobriety, going into that next holiday season, it was different. It was sweet. It was fun. It was like when I was a kid, when all of my cousins and aunts and uncles, we just gathered around. Everybody was happy. Everybody was laughing. We eat way too much in my family, and we were just, it was good. The first holidays, not so much. The second, third, fourth, and on have been unbelievable, and they just seem to get better and better, even with us having some family members that have passed away, right? Because they've seen the change in my life, and it's just kind of rolled into everything else, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's valuable for anyone to know and understand, be it an individual that's listening right now that is a family member of an addict who did suffer and is getting on the other side of it, as well as the addict that maybe is new to recovery or maybe long-term. For instance, I was thinking about this the other day. As you know, I enjoy the heck out of Disney and Disney parks.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be going around the holidays and enjoying, and going to meet up with some people that haven't known me in my sobriety, let alone when we went, it was, oh, you want to go get another drink. So I'm a different person that's going to interact with them. And I mean, I'm excited now, by the grace of God to see how that's going to change. But that's something that I had to remember is like, oh, a lot of people don't know me. And it might've been my journey of recovery has been 7 years and coming up on 4 years of continual sobriety, but they've not known me otherwise as an adult. That's all they've known. is the good fun guy
Yeah.
that, okay. And it's not that I always got way out of my mind, blitz drunk or anything like that. And most people didn't experience that, but they certainly experienced the party me. And so I have
Mm-hmm.
to be willing to accept that adjustment for them, it might take some time. New Perceptions North, the premier drug and alcohol treatment and recovery center in Central California. A full continuum of medically supervised, top quality care with programs for detox and patient residential treatment with dual diagnosis, intensive outpatient treatment, sober living support groups, and more. New Perceptions North provides adult men and women with the highest caliber of professional health care, treating each client with compassion and respect in a safe, comfortable environment to begin the process of recovery to proudly create and sustain a life without addiction. Call 559-978-1507 or visit newperceptionsnorth.com.
Well, and the time that it's going to take them is also has to do with the time that they were around you while you were using. You know what I mean? But the cool part about what you get to experience is something that's going to, I think it's going to impact your sobriety as much as it's going to impact the way they view you. Because you're going to see, man, I don't have to do what I used to do to feel the way that I feel now, right? Like I tell people all the time, my worst day in sobriety far trumps my best day in addiction. Even though I've experienced some horrific things, like my wife went through about 1.5 to 2 year battle of some really dark depression, and just she told me she wasn't suicidal, but she could understand why people did it. And as a preacher, when my wife was doubting everything about God and I'm standing behind a pulpit preaching and then watching my wife, I mean, that was so hard for me, Jason. But I didn't have to turn back to the drugs and the alcohol during those hard times. I could lean on my faith, and then I could be there for my wife. My wife didn't see me turn back to what I used to know. She saw me stand strong in what I believe today. And that's what you're going to get to experience. Maybe not the darkness that I just talked, but these people that have never seen you the way that you are now, they're going to be looking at you different. They're going to be waiting on you to stub your toe and then do something that you used to would have done. But you get to stand strong in what you now believe and show them that this is who you are, that you are who you are today because of the choices that you make today. And you no longer live the way that you used to live, which in sobriety, that's one of those like chest puffed out things. Like, yeah. I don't have to go back because I've made the choice today to take this day as it comes, because we only get today. We'll never get tomorrow again, or we'll never get tomorrow maybe. And yesterday we can never go back to, but we have today, and we get to make the choice now. I'm going to live different than I used to. And it's fun. It's hard in early sobriety, but it is fun the more you do it.
Yeah. Well, and that's thank you for sharing that, because you'll hear some people that they'll go about what you just said, that my worst day in sobriety is better than my best day in my addiction. They'll go, oh, that's bull. I had a lot of fun in my addiction. No. What you talked about was that great thing of responsibility and what truly gives us self-esteem. Now, joy is great, and we need joy. We need happiness. Like I enjoy chocolate chip oatmeal cookies. My lady made some the other day. I got to experience that nice little bit of happiness and eating that cookie, but that's this thing that lasts for such a minute period of time. I don't know, 15 minutes. But what you're talking about is everlasting, actual transformation and building of a life. And that's why I wholly agree with you on that, saying that it really is. Like, I just genuinely feel good about myself through good times, bad times, whatever it is, because I keep doing the next right thing. And that's really where the sauce is, the good stuff. Yeah. And I think people miss that, that it's going to be kind of like those commercials. You can go hiking, you can go kayaking. That's all good and well, but that's not necessarily building a life.
Well, and two, you said something, you just continue to do the next right thing. Well, in that, the next right thing sometimes is admitting when you did the wrong thing, because we still mess up. You know what I'm saying? Like, in our recovery and our sobriety and in our salvation, that who I have in Jesus, like I still mess up. I'm not perfect. I've shared with you some things on the other podcasts, like with my anger and my temper and all that. The thing that I have to do today that is different than what I used to do in my addiction, I have to own up in my failures and my shortcomings. And I have to, the next right thing for me a lot of times is owning up to my failures, confessing them, repenting of them, as we say in the church house, whatever you want to call it, and turning from them and pursuing back after the next right thing. See, that's, I think, too, we talk about sobriety a lot in early sobriety. When you're in this early sobriety stage, own up. I think I worked the steps, but it was so long ago. So I isn't like the step number 4 where you're making amends for the things. Is that step 4?
Correct.
That's sometimes just something I learned. You can make amends on that step 4, but sometimes you need to wait a minute before you verbally make that amend to the person. Because I learned, man, that some people are not ready for you to make amends, and they may respond in a way that's going to push you back into your addiction, And so you have to learn what works for you. You have to figure out, I can do this now. I shouldn't do this now, or I'm going to wait and do this. As far as like, I can go apologize for what I did. I should wait to apologize because they're still pretty hot and heavy. And you just kind of, you figure it out, man, as you go on. There's a lot of people, you've seen them, I've seen them, they get sober and they are just so fired up and so just, I did this wrong, this wrong, this wrong, this wrong. And then they go to the person that they've done wrong to, apologize to him, try to make amends to him. And then that person lashes out at them. And then the next thing you know, they feel so horrible about what they've done that they go back to the only thing that they know, which was their drugs or their alcohol, and they relapse. And I think the number one cause for relapse is relationships, whether that be with a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, mom, dad, brother, sister, or even a kid. And so you, above all else, guard your heart, because out of it comes a wellspring of life. You don't have to live with 10 years of sobriety when you only have 24 hours of sobriety. Yeah. You live with the sobriety that you have, and you do what you can in that. I live different as 10 years sober than somebody watching this with 24 hours or a month or a year or whatever. But I lived that way back then. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, very valid. Thank you. I know exactly what you mean. And I do caution some people. And some people, if it's 12-step work, they can, not rush, but they can rapidly take on the 12 steps, and maybe it works for them. But I know there's still people out there because, Luke, I'm still recalling certain things that I did, and maybe even prior to my actual quote unquote period of addiction or an alcoholism, that I owe some amends on. And they might even be things from my childhood. One of those was being somebody that I recall her being heavily bullied when we were kids. And I'm trying to remember if I was a part of that. And so, I just reached out. Social media is how I had the contact and just asking them how they were doing, and they appreciated it. And the response was actually, "Thank you for always being nice to me when we were kids." And I was like,
that was like
oh yeah, God, thank you for lightening my heart, because I really didn't remember. I think, and I was appreciative of them sharing that, and I let them know. And I said, that really meant a lot, because I wasn't sure. It was on my heart, literally in a time of prayer. You came, like seeing you as a kid came into my mind. And, so we have those kind of things. Or certain people, they want to, like you said, apologize for the 10 years of addiction and the people that they harmed, when those people, if you had just walked into the first holiday, apologize to everybody, it can drive people even further away from you. Sometimes it takes some patience, and some people, and I would say the vast majority, need that ultimate living amends, where they see that you're living different, to know that your apology even has any validity to it. Because I don't know about you, I was a guy, I would get drunk, and I recall this lady that I was seeing. I would get drunk, then apologize for the night before. And then a week later, it was the same thing. If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, please call PAIN, Parents and Addicts in Need, at 559-579-1551, or visit us online at painnonprofit.org. Follow us on social media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Pain Nonprofit. And please subscribe to the Don't Hide the Scars podcast and share with others wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. And if you would like to donate to PAIN, Parents and Addicts in Need, please click the link in the description to make your tax-deductible donation today and help us save more lives gripped by addiction.
My dad was my biggest critic in early sobriety. People would come to me all the time. They said, man, I talked to your dad and told him that you're doing good. And he says, well, let's just wait and see what happens. And rightly so. My dad comes from a family of addiction. Right now, he guarded us in our home from it, so we never saw it, but my dad saw it growing up. And he's seen so many people say that they found God and that they got sober and all these things. So here comes his son, who just a few days before my sobriety pretty much told my dad he could F off, and that I did not care. I didn't want to be his son. The guy that taught me how to sell drugs called me son and told me that he loved me. And my dad had never told me that he loved me, but he showed me that he loved me. Know that now, didn't know it back then. And so the enemy used that guy that called me son and told me that he loved me. I said, you know what? He's my dad. My real dad's not my dad. I don't want anything to do with him. And so all that happened in addiction. Now all of a sudden I'm sober, chasing after Jesus, and coming to my dad trying to act like we're buddy. And my dad's like, no, I need to see if this is real, And in early sobriety, he was harsh. He was short. Matter of fact, I was a few days sober and I was in Georgia, and I called him. I said, Dad, just calling to see how you're doing. He said, I don't understand what the hell you're doing, riding around, telling all these things, asking people to send you money. You need to bring your butt on home, blah, blah, blah. And I hollered back at him, and I hung up the phone. And bro, when I tell you, I pulled to a stop sign, and I'd found $100 in my truck that I used to keep for emergencies, and I'd gotten gas with it, pulled up to a stop sign, and to go right would have taken me to Louisiana. And I was fixing to go back home and bow up to my dad and just probably would have gone back. Or I could turn left and continue following after what I felt like God was telling me to do. And my truck turned left. And as I was driving down the road, my phone rang, and it was my dad. And he said, where are you at? I said, I'm headed to Florida. I'm going where I feel like God's telling me to go. He said, well, good. I'm going to tell you not to come home if you're mad. I said, well, I'm not coming home, and I'm mad. But now you fast forward to 10 years. My dad was the best man in my wedding. February 24th, 2018, stood right behind me, right beside me, handed me my wife's ring, which was actually the same ring that he gave to my mom. He holds my daughters. He comes and sees them. He is a good papaw. He's a phenomenal dad. But if I would have twisted off in early sobriety because of the things that were going on between my dad and I, we wouldn't have the relationship that we have today. Yeah. And so did he say some hurtful things? Yeah, but I also said some hurtful things too. Now we look back at that and we say, man, praise the Lord. So if you're in early sobriety or any kind of sobriety and you scream and holler at somebody in your family, make it right. Understand that you've said things, they said things. Don't blame them. Don't get mad at them. Don't allow what they say to push you back into your addiction. And you just gotta know that they're going to say some stuff like, this is not Hollywood. This is not happy endings all the time. Like, this is life. And in life, people say things, do things that oftentimes have a reaction that can either push you one way or the other.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Luke, for sharing to the part, making it clear that you had a part in it. And a lot of people, I think, especially when we're in addiction and freshly coming out of that, we can still be in a victim mindset. as if we had no part in all these things. If this was done to me, you did this, you did, we just want to throw it out there as if we weren't a present part of what was going on in our life. I mean, we were, anyone in addiction, we were a willing participant of it all. Now, granted, our nervous system is hijacked, our mind is hijacked, our spirit is definitely hijacked. As you said, Luke, the enemy has taken over and it's winning. So we're in that fight of getting all these things back, and it's a process. But we have to ditch the victim mentality and take onus that we were a part of it. We were a willing participant. Even if we don't recall our actions, we have to own them. I am a victim of that. By the end, I was always a blackout drinker. And stuff happened that this brain may not recall, but this body did it. And it carried it out. And that is my fault 100%. I don't get to blame all the negative, bad stuff that happened or the bad behavior.
Yeah. And two, but what we're saying, like, that's not saying that what happened to you is not important or impactful. Correct. But we're also saying, like, that you can't keep blaming all the stuff that has happened. Well, you've said it multiple times. You've got to take ownership. And I think key is consistency. You have to be consistent in your sobriety. Admit when you have bad days. Like, that's where a sponsor comes into play. That's why going to meetings helps a lot. In my early sobriety, I was at a church meeting on Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, AA Friday night, Saturday night, church Sunday, and was at an AA or NA meeting at noon every day in my early sobriety, because that gave me accountability and consistency. And I was surrounded by people that were trying to do what I was trying to do. And that was extremely helpful, man. Like, because I wasn't ashamed of it anymore. And then when I would remember things that I had done, and you've said it, there's still things that I don't remember, but other people do. There's still things that I've said that I don't remember, but other people do. And for the longest, they held on to that. When's he going to pop off again? When's he going to show up again and do this and X, Y, and Z? Like, I've had people threaten to have restraining orders on me that have never forgotten that. And there's again, but you have to be willing to stay consistent and to just push through and to not let what they say determine what you're going to do. Because they're going to say some things. But then too, like, we're kind of getting a little heavy in this. There's also those handful of people that are going to be your biggest cheerleaders and your biggest supporters. And for me, that was my mom. And I have an aunt that was they were my biggest supporters and my biggest cheerleaders. And they still had days where they said some things. And of course I said some things too, but they were there with me. They helped me financially in some things in early sobriety. And they were, every time for Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, any holiday, they were there cheering me on and supporting me. And that's something too that you need to know. Sure, there's going to be a lot of naysayers and negative Nancy's, but they're just saying what they've seen, right? But then you're going to have those that are going to encourage you, and they're going to be there with you. But don't expect them to stand up for you in a way that's going to go against their spouse. Can I say something, Jason? Yeah. If it's okay. Husbands, guard your wives if your child is an addict. Wives, guard your husbands if your child is an addict. What I mean by that is, I've seen it happen a lot. The child is an addict, and the husband wants to do one thing and the wife wants to do another thing. And what happens is, the husband goes the way he wants to go, the wife goes the way she wants to go, and the addict's in the middle. And that child's addiction is ripping apart your marriage. And I believe marriage is holy. I believe marriage is something that is beautiful. And I believe that there's nothing stronger than a husband and wife that are in complete agreement. And so you need to be aware of the enemy's tactic. And I believe the enemy to be Satan. That's what I see in scripture. You need to be aware of his tactic, that he will use whatever necessary. So be on the same page. When your child's coming over for Thanksgiving or Christmas, be on the same page of how you're going to handle them. If you have rules set to where if they show up messed up, they can't stay, then be ready to stand strong in that. and come together as a husband and wife, and don't let the addiction separate you. Because I've seen so many people
Mm-hmm.
get divorced because of the way that the addict was manipulating the situation. And I, man, honestly, I was one of those addicts that could manipulate my mom and manipulate my dad. But as it went on, my mom and dad went and sat down together and they came up with a plan. They went and met with lawyers to get everything right in the will. I mean, when they had enough, they had enough. And they made a plan and they stuck to it. And their marriage, although there was still some, because my dad wanted to just beat the crap out of me, right? Like that was my dad's mentality. He wanted to
Right.
just beat me, take me in. He had the police trying to catch me. They never could. My mom wanted to kind of nurture me and just do things differently. But then when they sat down and they came up with that plan, like, this is how we're going to respond. This is what we're going to tell them. This is what we're going to have to do. Their marriage got stronger. And I believe that my addiction got a little weaker because I realized I couldn't manipulate my family anymore because they had come together. And I'm telling you, when you take control away from an addict, because an addict wants control, and an addict's pretty good at having control. When you take that control away, they just start spiraling. And that spiraling usually either leads to an arrest or it leads to something to where they're forced with making a choice. And you get to be there together instead of being separated in the whole ordeal.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Luke.
Mhm.
That is so incredibly valuable because, Luke, we've seen it so much. And I know that Flint has experienced it with the support groups that he does for loved ones of recovering addicts or those still suffering, that there is that divide. Oftentimes you got maybe one with the tough love and one with the, nurturing love, quote unquote. And the reality of
Yeah.
the best plan is, somewhere in that middle of it where it's loving, but like you said, taking away that control where they don't get to control your finances, your accessibility, your emotional state.
Yeah.
All these things really have to they have to be stripped away from that individual for them to see it serious. And
Yeah.
it's again an opportunity for the family as individuals and a collective to grow themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a full believer of the statement that this is a family disease. It is. And it's really,
Yeah.
it's a societal, communal, we can look at it as a nation disease if we want. But if we start just from
Yeah.
that standpoint where the individual family member can look in and go, okay, and maybe have that conversation. How can we strengthen our family from this? How can our family get better and grow through this? How can we deflect the things that the enemy is throwing at us? Because they are. Your loved one has been taken from you. They have been hijacked.
Yep.
That is a robbery. That is not part of the promises. That is not part of the go and be prosper. It is quite the opposite.
Yeah.
So that's an incredibly valuable thing because what I see a lot too is maybe not the immediate, but the extended family members of, well, it's their problem. I like my wine for Thanksgiving. Well, maybe that's a situation, aunt, uncle, cousin, whatever it is, that maybe you need to take a look in the mirror too. So I think the more open that a family can be as the individuals and wholes to look at what is in front of them, they can maybe have that question come up of, how do I play a role now in the prospering of our family?
Yeah. You said that and it made me think of a young man that we helped years ago, and his brother and dad enjoyed having a beer every now and then. Now I'm in the camp. I don't see anything wrong with somebody that can. I just can't. And I'm be honest with you, if you think that you need a drink to enjoy something, then you have a problem. Right? Like that is what an addict thinks. I need a drink to wind down. I need a drink to do this. That's the mindset of an addict, in case you didn't know. But this brother and dad enjoyed a beer. And the other son was an addict. I mean, he drank, he did cocaine, just all these things. And when the younger brother started to get sober, the older brother and the dad were like, well, that's his problem. Kind of like you said, it's not my problem. I can still have a drink. And just a word of caution to family members of addicts that think that way. When an addict sees you drinking, even if you can drink just a drink here and there, what that addict's mindset is, well, it's okay to have a drink. And then they're going to want to have a drink with you. And they're going to say, oh, I'm just going to have a drink with you. And then it'll turn into two, it'll turn into three. And then the next thing you know, spiraling out of control. Try this. If you have a loved one that's an addict, stop drinking. And you say, well, that's not fair. It's not my problem. No, it is your problem. Like, this addiction affects you as much as it affects the addict, if not more. It's kind of sad that we have so much for the addict, not so much for the families. And we have Al-Anon and those kinds of things, but there's no rehab for families because their life has to continue. They have to keep going to work. They've got to keep doing these things. And so I think there needs to be more for the families, if not more than what there is for the addict. But just don't drink. Don't let them see that it's okay to do that in their early parts of sobriety, because you've got the mindset of an addict is such a wild place. It'd be like dropping a little splash of blood in a pool of sharks and expecting those sharks not to tear each other apart, just trying to get to that little bit of blood. That's what an addict in early sobriety is like. You put a little bit in front of them, they're going to tear limb to limb just to try to get to that little bit. And then they're going to go for more and more and more and more.
Yep.
So if you're getting ready for the holidays and you like your glass of wine, I would encourage you not to drink it around that individual. If you want to have your glass of wine and you're not an addict and you're fine with just a glass, by all means, do what you think's necessary. But as somebody that's in recovery, I'd advise you not to drink it in front of that addict.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And we're not necessarily saying forever. Like, for me, it doesn't bother me now.
No.
That's
all early sobriety.
Yeah. My exit strategy, if it's anything of it, is when people are just getting belligerent, like, I'm out because I just have no desire to be around it. There's no substance that's going to occur there, nothing good other than, hey, are you guys done? Do you need a sober ride home? You're covered. Good. Okay. I'm out. So it doesn't bother me now to be in a bar or environment where people are. I had actually over the summer a relative, and they were drinking at this gathering, and then eventually it was just like, you are just sloppy. This is just completely unenjoyable. And then they sent the text message the next day. Oh, I'm sorry, you seem to not come back. Well, was I this and that? Yeah, you were. And if you want to talk about that, we can talk about that. If not, I'm not pressuring you. I love you. I'm here. If this is a problem, if not, and this is how, again, it's not my place to call you out. This is your thing to reflect upon and ask if it's created great consequences for you. Just know I'm here, but also respect the fact that don't take it personal. I'm just out. I don't care who you are. You could be my, I can't even think of a celebrity right now that I necessarily want to hang out with, but maybe somebody that I have some sort of admiration for. I would be out just the same. It doesn't matter, because now where I'm at in my life, I know what my outs are, and I have my plans, my easy way, What about, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, that's early sobriety I would caution it. Long-term sobriety, that person, like, you have your outs, I have my outs. Because if I hang around a drunk person for too long, that's usually when my temper flares. Because I'm like, a word of caution for those of us in long-term sobriety, don't ever forget what the early days were like. And don't ever forget what it was like to be drunk or high. Because if you do that, you're going to start looking down your nose at people instead of looking at them with a burdened heart of, how can I help this individual see that there is a better life? Or how can I help this individual see that if they just keep pushing in their sobriety, that things do begin to change, and you will begin to see that prosperous life like you were talking about, Jason. Like, so it's kind of one of those early sobriety. I wouldn't do it. When a person has longer sobriety, ask them if it's okay. Ask them if they mind. And if they say, no, I don't mind, then go for it. If they say they do mind, respect them. Don't do it in front of them. And people may say, well, that's just, I don't agree with that. That's okay. You don't have to agree with me. Like, that's just my personal opinion from what I've seen in the past 10 years. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, let's maybe close on one that I get asked oftentimes too is, for the person early in sobriety, what were some of those methods of the outs? For me, like, we all get asked, a lot of us, maybe we bump into that person that used to know us as the guy at the bar and like, hey, you want a
yeah,
drink? I mean, I would say everything from, oh, I'm driving tonight, which they might go, you are always driving tonight.
yeah,
True. Or I've even used, no, I'm on an antibiotic, it'll interact bad. And when I had a drink one time, true story, I ended up getting thrush, a thing that usually
yeah.
kids get, but I got it because the antibiotic and the yeast and the alcohol. My
Okay.
tongue turned orange. It was, oh yeah, woke up one morning, I had an orange tongue. I'm like, what the, um, so I would use any of those things because too early in your recovery, like, don't feel that you owe any and everyone an answer. You know what I'm saying,
Yeah.
Luke? I mean, your
Yeah.
thoughts.
I would say, be prepared for people to offer you your drug of choice, right? Like, I I believe in the scriptures we've talked about this, and it says that to be aware of your enemy, the devil prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. And you need to be prepared that just because you're saying you're sober does not mean that the drugs and the alcohol are not going to come at you even more. So you have to be prepared that it's coming, and you have to be ready with an answer. For me, when people would offer me stuff in early sobriety, it was, I always had an answer ready. Hey man, I'm living a different life. I don't want any of that. Thank you though. If they offered me a second time, I'd leave. I was homeless in my first 7 months of sobriety, lived in my truck outside of a coffee shop. And but I always had some people that would offer me a couch or a bed or place to shower, some of those things. And this one individual was working on an oil field location, and he had a trailer house out there that I could go shower in. And I used to sell to him, used to get high with him, all these things. So I go out there, early sobriety, show up, and he tells me, he says, hey, look, we're going to be blowing down here in just a little bit, just letting you know. I said, no, it's not going to bother me, man. I went and took a shower, went to sleep, didn't think nothing of it. The next day, went back out there. He said, hey, we're going to be blowing down again. I said, for those of you who don't know, they were getting high. They were rolling a 10 and 2. They were whatever.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, that's fine, man. Whatever. Went and took a shower, went to bed. The third day I went out there, he walked into the place. He threw a rag on the ground. He said, stomp on that rat for me. Walked back out. And I kind of was like, is this a real rat? Like, so I pushed the rag with my foot a little bit. And then I finally said, oh, heck with it. And when I stomped, I heard glass shatter. And it was his pipe. And I shattered it with my foot because he had seen me twice say, no, I don't want any. That third time, he's like, man, there's something to this. And
Huh.
so he tried pursuing after sobriety. He's had a couple of missteps here and there. The last I talked to him, he was doing better. And so it's just your consistency and your willingness to pursue sobriety. It's contagious. Like, I have a lot of people from my old days who are now sober, doing some incredible things with their life, got their kids back. One guy, like, was in South Carolina when they found him, put him on a bus to Springfield, Missouri. God did incredible work in his life through a program called Freeway Ministries. And now this individual whose kids were crying because he was missing, his son lives with him in his home. And I mean, it is just through the consistency of his sobriety and his trust in Jesus, like, incredible things have taken place. And so be ready. It's coming. They're going to offer it to you. Own up to your sobriety. Tell them, hey, man, I'm sober. And if they offer it to you again, same response. Third time, if they offer it, leave. You don't have to be around them. I kind of use the magnifying glass as a example in this. Like, if you look at something through a magnifying glass, all you're going to see is what's being magnified. But if you take a step back, you can see everything that surrounds it. And when you're hanging around the people that were doing what you used to do, going where you used to go, all the things, you're in that magnifying glass. And all you can see is that right there. If you separate yourself from all that, you can see everything that's going on around, and so can they. They no longer see you as the person still going to the same places, doing the same thing. They see you as a new person who's living a new life. And it's contagious for some and annoying for others. Like there's people that are annoyed by me. They call me a Jesus freak, Bible thumper, preacher, whatever. They used to call me a meth head, alcoholic, no good, dirty, rotten, all the other names behind it. There's going to be people that love the fact that you're sober. And then there's going to be people that go to their grave expecting you to relapse within the next day. Who cares what other people think or what other people say? The only person in my life that it really matters what they think or what they say is my wife and my kids. But my wife will tell me when I'm out of line, but my wife will tell me when I'm doing well. And it matters to me what she thinks about me because she has agreed to be married to me for the rest of our lives. Yeah. And my kids, I want them to have a high view of their dad. I want them to know who I am, what I believe, what I do. And they matter to me. People that I don't know, Jason, they matter to me as a soul, but what they say, because I get hate mail. I'm sure you do too, right? Like we talked about it on another podcast, like people say things and I'll read it. And it can call me the worst names in the world. And I praise God for that button that says delete. Yeah. Because ultimately, all it is a message on a screen that I can either let irritate me and push me into a dark place, or I can hit delete and I can have peace. I choose to hit delete.
Yes, sir. So, at the end of the day, so much of it is it's just a story. Which one do you want to play a part in?
Yeah, man. Like, addiction is a monster. Recovery is beautiful. The monster hides in the darkness. Recovery exposes what's done in the darkness with the light. And I've seen it happen so many times where people they want sobriety and they want everything, but then what somebody says or what somebody does, that monster pushes them back into addiction. And a word of caution for those of you that are watching this that may be in sobriety, you don't start back over when you relapse or when you go back. You pick up right where you left off, and it's even worse. Like I have some friends that relapse after 7 or 8 years of sobriety, and it is nasty what has taken place. And they'll tell you to themselves, like, we didn't start over. We picked back up where we left off, and we went even faster. Mm-hmm. And so it's just, you nailed it, man. It's all of the story, and it all depends on which story you want to be told. That of the monster or that of sobriety. I would choose sobriety.
Yes, sir. Hey, Luke, if people want to connect with you and give them Jesus, the work you're doing, maybe tell them a little bit about it and the easiest way to do so.
Yeah. So 21 days in sobriety, I got the opportunity to go share my story in a church. And I text my uncle, who is a godly man. And I said, bro, I'm nervous. And he said, son, you just give him Jesus and he'll take care of the rest. And that kind of is where our trademark has come from, give them Jesus. And so what we do is we look for opportunities to share Jesus with the world, whether that be our preaching, our giving, our benevolence, whatever. We help people get into recovery programs. We have scholarship funds that we'll help people with. We'll help families of addicts. If that addict passes away, we'll help them in their kind of grieving and in the funeral process and all that, because oftentimes a lot of people that lose addicts don't have the funds for funerals. And so we want to help in any way that we can. You can find us on our website, giveemjesus.org, or you can just go to Google, type in Give 'em Jesus, and we'll pop up, and anything we can do. And like I said on knocking doors down, man, even if you don't agree with me, you can still reach out to me and we can have a peaceful conversation, and I can learn from you, and prayerfully you can learn from me.
Yes, sir. Hey, Luke, I appreciate you, my brother. Congratulations. 10 years plus now of sobriety.
Yeah.
Building a beautiful
10 years
life.
and 2 days. Yeah, man. It's good stuff.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you all for either watching on our YouTube channel at Pain Nonprofit or on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, where you can listen. Please leave us a rating, review, subscribe. And if you got value out of this, please share with someone else that you think needs to hear this message and will get value out of it as well. If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, please call PAIN, Parents and Addicts in Need, at 559-579-1551, or visit us online at painnonprofit.org. Follow us on social media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Pain Nonprofit. And please subscribe to the Don't Hide the Scars podcast and share with others wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. And if you would like to donate to PAIN, Parents and Addicts in Need, please click the link in the description to make your tax-deductible donation today and help us save more lives gripped by addiction.